Caught my girlfriend cheating with my best friend and turned him over to the police. My wife Rachel and I grew up in a decent-sized town of about 30,000 people. We'd known each other since we were 6, practically inseparable. At 16, we started dating, and by 18, we moved a few hours away to a city for work. At 20, we got married and bought our first house. When we were 22, Rachel got pregnant with our son, but then disaster struck. About 5 weeks before her maternity leave, a massive shelving unit collapsed at her workplace, crushing her. I was told she and our unborn child died instantly. 2 of her colleagues were also injured, one paralyzed, the other lost a leg. The company, trying to cut costs, kept using old, unsafe shelves despite warnings. I'll never forgive the executives and managers who made that call. They took the love of my life and our unborn child. I was offered what the company called compensation, but I called blood money. They wanted to settle out of court to avoid a lawsuit, but I craved justice. Thanks to heavy media coverage and some politicians getting involved, the case went to court and was settled in about 3 years. The payout was nearly 10 times their initial offer, and the company faced massive fines for safety violations. Several executives were fired, some even jailed. During this time, I kept working at a telecommunications company. My mom, bless her, moved in to help me cope. I don't think I'd have made it without her. Around then, I was offered a promotion that involved frequent travel across the state. I requested an office in my hometown branch, wanting to balance business with staying close to home where the company didn't have a rep. They agreed. A few months later, I bought a house in my hometown so I wouldn't have to crash at my parents' place during visits and could come and go as I pleased. This matters for the story. 4 years later, I was back from a business trip on a Friday, working in the office, when Harry, the branch's managing director, walked in. We grew up together, though we went to different schools, and became close friends after I moved back. He asked how I was doing, then invited me to a party at his house that evening. It was a last-minute invite, but I said yes. I needed a drink with friends. At the party, Harry introduced me to Catherine, a new employee at the hometown branch, still getting to know the team. It was her first time in our town. We hit it off instantly. It sounds cliché, but it felt like Rachel was standing in front of me, not Catherine. I'll spare you the details, but after 2 years of dating, we took the next step, and Catherine moved into my hometown house. Things were great. My parents got along with her, and Rachel's parents approved, happy I'd found someone who made me as joyful as Rachel had. Everything was perfect for almost a year until things started shifting. Video calls got shorter. Neighbors mentioned seeing a car matching Harry's parked in the alley by my house when I was away. I found clothes in the closet that weren't mine. All signs pointed to cheating, but Catherine insisted everything was fine, saying Harry just stopped by to discuss work and never stayed overnight. I chalked it up to paranoia and tried to move on, but something felt off. 6 months later, I caught her lying. I'd closed a big contract with a new company, and the deal wrapped up early. Instead of staying a few extra days, I paid for an earlier flight home to surprise everyone. I drove to my hometown, parked in the alley to sneak in and surprise Catherine, but part of me wanted to see if that mystery car was there. Sure enough, Harry's car was blocking the back entrance. I froze, thinking it might be a careless neighbor, until I realized it was definitely his. I parked behind it, got out, and thought it was weird he was there so late. She'd said he always left early. Approaching the back of the house, my heart sank. I stood there, time stopping, as I saw my close friend having sex with my girlfriend on my kitchen counter. I didn't know what to do. A million questions raced through my mind. Was this real? Why my house? Feeling shattered, I turned and left without being seen. I sat in my car for what felt like forever, crying hard. But sadness quickly turned to rage, the same rage I felt toward those responsible for Rachel's death. I wanted to hurt them badly. As a pacifist, I don't believe in violence, so I decided to punish them another way, by ruining their lives. I drove back down the alley, far enough to still see Harry's car, then walked to the gate where I could see the house and called Catherine. They were still at it when her phone rang. They both looked at the screen, saw my name, and exchanged glances. She hesitated but didn't answer. Moments later, they started again. I called again, and this time she picked up. As soon as she did, I hung up and headed back to my car. She called back, asking why I was calling so late. I said I'd be home in 10 minutes and didn't want to scare her by showing up unannounced. She was clearly shocked but played it off, saying she was excited. The call ended quickly after she said she'd go change. I said goodbye and hung up. Seconds later, Harry bolted out the gate, half-dressed, jumped into his car, and sped off like he was being chased. I smirked, knowing the panic they both felt at nearly being caught. I waited a bit, then parked where Harry's car had been. The rest of the night was calm. Only after Catherine fell asleep did I get up and go to my office down the hall. I couldn't sleep, I needed a plan, and I got to work. My mom always taught me to be a pacifist and let karma do its thing, but this time, I decided karma needed a nudge. I planned to punish them separately but destroy both their lives. I knew Harry was into drugs, nothing hardcore, but he kept it secret. I'd accidentally seen some powder and weed at his place once but pretended I didn't notice when he tried to hide it. I started contacting clients involved in shady deals, making requests to buy drugs. A few weeks later, I had enough to make my plan work. About a month later, I hosted a barbecue for friends, including Harry. After ensuring he was drunk, I offered to let him crash at my place. Early the next morning, I planted drugs and some of my personal belongings in his car, hiding the bulk in the spare tire compartment, certain he wouldn't find it for months. I locked his car and went to bed. I also planted more drugs and items at his house when I drove him home, as he was too drunk to drive. A few days later, I staged a break-in at my house, smashing the back door's window and leaving it open before heading to the airport. When I landed, I had messages, one from my freaked-out mom who found the broken door and called the police, one from a crying Catherine, and one from the local police asking me to call back. I told the police I was on a business trip and would return the next week to talk. While away, I asked Catherine to stay with my parents until I got back and had my dad arrange for a security company to install cameras and an alarm system. When I returned, I played the shocked victim. "Oh my God, I can't believe this happened, who would do this?" After checking the house and noting my stolen items, I filed a police report. A security company rep came to explain the cameras and alarm to Catherine and me. Then came the question I'd been waiting for. Catherine, looking embarrassed, asked what to do if we were doing something and didn't want it recorded. The rep said it's a common question and showed us how to disable specific cameras for privacy on the home computer. As I walked him out, I asked if we could set up email notifications for when cameras were turned off, just for safety. He helped me set it up and left. Next, I consulted a family law attorney to ensure my plan was legal and that I wouldn't owe Catherine money or property. Since we weren't legally married, and I paid all the bills while Catherine didn't contribute to rent, she had no legal claim to anything. To be safe, the lawyer drafted a rock-solid document to protect me from any legal issues. The next week, my employer offered me a promotion to lead a team back in the city, meaning less travel and a permanent base. The move would take about 6 weeks, perfect timing. Back in my hometown, I started the rest of my plan. I asked Harry to approve a week-long vacation for Catherine in 2 weeks, saying I wanted to send her and 2 friends on a trip before taking the next big step in my life. He jumped up, hugged me, and congratulated me on being ready to move forward, assuming I meant proposing. I hugged him back, but not for the reasons he thought. He agreed and reserved the week, promising to keep it quiet as I wanted it to be a big surprise. I knew office gossip would spread, which was part of my plan. That evening, I told Catherine I'd booked a week-long trip to a luxury spa resort for her and 2 friends, all expenses paid. "Pick 2 friends and come back to the biggest surprise of your life," I said. She squealed like a kid told they owned a candy store. I added that I'd be in town the next week prepping for a big client meeting, then flying out and not returning until Monday, when she'd be leaving. She was a bit bummed, but I assured her the surprise would be worth it. What I didn't tell her was that I'd taken a 2-week vacation on the other side of the country to mentally prepare for the storm I was about to unleash and enjoy the first taste of my freedom. 2 weeks later, on Sunday, I returned and drove home. Passing my house, I saw Harry's car parked there, just like the first night I caught them. I parked farther down, checked the cameras, and saw them sleeping in my bed, no surprise, considering I'd recorded them having sex over the 2 weeks I was gone. Then I made my first call to the police, posing as a neighbor. I said I saw someone loitering in a car in the alley, occasionally passing things through windows to passing cars and peeking into my yard, and I was worried they were dealing drugs or planning a break-in. I gave them Harry's license plate and description. They said they'd send someone soon. I thanked them and hung up. Next, I called Catherine, saying I'd be home in 10 minutes and wanted to surprise her, even though I knew she was leaving tomorrow. Watching the footage later, I laughed at the chaos that ensued. I'm shocked I didn't hear it from the street. Seconds later, Harry, half naked, bolted out the back door to his car. I couldn't have scripted it better. As he sped off, a police car turned the corner, saw him peeling out, and gave chase. After parking, I greeted a flustered Catherine, and we went through our usual couple routine. She fell asleep, but I couldn't. The next day, a taxi took Catherine and her friends to the airport. After they left, I waited a few hours and started my plan. I called a friend who does moving services and asked him to help pack and move things that Friday. I said some boxes needed to go to a storage unit I'd rented. He agreed. Then I began packing Catherine's belongings. Later that day, the police called, asking me to identify items they'd seized from a suspect the previous night that matched my stolen property report. I grinned, thrilled my plan against Harry was working, and said I'd come soon. At the station, some items were still missing, likely at Harry's house, where the police hadn't searched yet. The town was buzzing. Small towns don't keep secrets long. Harry was humiliated and fired for drug possession and stolen goods. Our bosses even issued me a formal apology on behalf of the company. That evening, I went to my parents' house and told them and Rachel's parents what happened, leaving out some details about Harry. I said I was moving back to the city for the promotion, without the cheating Catherine. They were upset I hadn't told them sooner, but proud I handled it with dignity and didn't stoop to her level. They approved of my plan to ghost Catherine. After some drinks, laughs, and tears, I went home. On Friday afternoon, after a hectic week organizing cleaners for the next week, prepping the house for rent, and handling office tasks, I packed some things into my car and stopped by my parents to say goodbye. Before leaving, I visited Becky, one of Rachel's childhood best friends and the only person besides my lawyer who knew what was going on, minus the Harry details. Without her help, I couldn't have pulled this off so fast. I gave Becky a large envelope with evidence of Catherine's cheating, a letter, and legal documents from my attorney stating Catherine was barred from contacting me and detailing how she could retrieve her belongings from the storage unit. After a quick goodbye, I drove back to the city. On Sunday, I woke up to a flood of missed calls, voicemails, and texts. Catherine had returned early after hearing something was up in town and found an empty house with a for rent sign out front. In a panic, she went to my parents, who slammed the door in her face, prompting her to call everyone until she reached Becky and learned about the package. She didn't take it well, as expected. Her angry messages accused me of framing Harry. I worried she might show up at my door, but she didn't. Now, to answer common questions about this story. What happened to Harry, and why was I so harsh? Harry faces a few months in jail since it's his first offense, but he might get out early. I think it was necessary. He knew me and Rachel since childhood and knew how hard it was for me to rebuild after her death. Did I compromise myself by sharing this online? I left out key details to avoid being identified and altered location descriptions to make it seem like this could have happened anywhere. Harry already had enough evidence at his house. I just gave the police a reason to dig deeper. What happened to Catherine? She saw herself as a socialite and valued her status. Exposing her infidelity killed her reputation. I heard she recently moved to another state because staying in town was too uncomfortable. Was what I did legal? Morally, I know sending her on a trip and moving her stuff was sneaky, especially since she thought a proposal was coming. Combined with ruining her social status, that was my goal, to make her feel what it's like when your world collapses. Legally, I was in the clear. To those calling my story fake or saying I'm a fame-hungry sociopath, think what you want. I don't care. So, what do you think? Was I right to do this? My take: I barely did anything to Catherine, who deserved maximum revenge. I went too hard on Harry, though. He's a scumbag who knew how much I suffered after Rachel's death, but did he deserve jail? Legally, no, and in my view, maybe not. With Catherine, I didn't confront her face to face, almost like I was scared, and I paid for a week-long spa trip for her and her friends, letting her cheat for another month and a half. That's unthinkable. Share your thoughts in the comments, agree or disagree? Thanks for watching this video to the end. Check out our previous video linked here, and good luck!